Have you or someone you know been affected by mental health or substance use disorder? Well, you are not alone. Welcome to the podcast, Riverfront Talks, Substance Matters. I am Tiffany Moore, the coordinator for the Beaufort County 360 Behavioral Health Task Force. We're going to sit down and have some in-depth conversations with individuals who may have struggled themselves with mental health or substance use disorder, or perhaps know someone who has struggled. Either way, we're going to have some inspiration, motivation, and maybe even some tearjerkers. Welcome to the podcast, Riverfront Talks, Substance Matters. Welcome back, y'all, for part 2 of Riverfront Talks, Substance Matters. We are back again with Miss Jewell Gardner. We just kind of peeked the tip of the iceberg with her and her story and her experiences, so we wanted to start back where we left off. She was beginning to tell us about postpartum depression and how it affected her, and when she actually realized that that is what she was experiencing with her youngest child. So I'm going to turn to you.
All right. Thank you again, Tiffany. So it might have been a 6-week checkup, what have you, and I had gone back to the Brody building. I was high risk, so I had to see a provider at Brody's, and I remember the doctor walking in and asking me how was things going, and I just started crying. I could even get through the exam, and then right then, that day, they linked me with their licensed clinical social worker, and it was like she just made me feel comfortable. It was like she understood, she didn't judge, and I started seeing her. I probably went back to see her a couple more times, and then, you know how it is, life hit again.
But for once, because we've gone through a lot of different challenges just talking to you in the first episode. We had domestic violence. You had a newborn baby as a single mother who had difficulties. Then a little bit further down the road, you found out he had a few more difficulties related to behavioral health. And during this time, you also had additional children. And for you at this point, you're not understanding what's going on as to why you're not relating to your child or nurturing the way I guess you probably felt like you did with your first two. Were you shocked or surprised or anything when you actually talked with the therapist and found out, hey, this is a condition that I have? Because remember, all this has been highlighted on the other end. This is a me time. Somebody's focusing on me. I've done all this for everybody else.
Right. And I was like, no, this can't be. I'm going to snap out of it. This is, no. So, but then it was like a relief once I was able to actually talk to somebody about it and realize and recognize that this or that feeling did not make me a bad parent.
No.
I needed help.
Yep. And it's common. Prior to this encounter, had you ever actually stopped, just out of curiosity, had you stopped and said, hey, I need to check on me?
I did not.
You just kept rolling with the punches?
And it's something you would say that because I do teach a parenting class now, and I use this example I'm getting ready to share with you. I was at a forum or conference right here at Thailand, and I remember the facilitator asking, what do we do for self-care? And that was foreign. What is self-care? I don't know. And it was a room full of providers, and I don't know, for some reason, she asked me. And I remember sitting at that table that day. She asked me, and I could not answer her. I did not know the last time I had done anything for myself. And that created a light bulb. But I sat there at that table with tears dropping because I'm like, wow. I'm losing myself.
Mm-hmm. So yet again, in recent times, somebody's pointed out the fact that you need to focus on you regardless of what you're going through. Just another little ad lib here for our parents
Anyway.
going through it. Self-care is the best care. You can't take care of anybody else if you're not focusing on your needs.
Mm-hmm.
So you were able to continue for at least a little while this therapy, this one-on-one that was a focus on you.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I would say, probably because I know you said, I knew you were getting ready to say, oh, life just sped on up and I had to jump back into being the savior for everybody else. So you had a short period of time you were able to focus on you. But that encounter with that therapist, for you, not for your children, enabled you to continue on to provide the support that your oldest son and maybe even your youngest son needed at the time?
It did. It did. To have someone, I always love to use the word pour back into you because I associate us as a cup.
Mm-hmm.
We can keep pouring out, pouring out, pouring out. But if nobody is pouring anything back into your cup,
It's going to be depleted.
we're going to be depleted.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So, not to disregard you. We love you. But so that we can, because again, there's a lot here. And I want to make sure we at least touch on all of it. So we're going to jump back into your son.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't mind, I'll ask you to give me an overview because we saw progress. We saw something he liked, something that was kind of maybe calming, something that was inside in around about the 8th grade or so. Can you take us 10th through 12th grade and let us know how, did he continue playing ball?
He did. He continued playing ball, and thank God things started to level out with him. 10th grade, he was like, I don't think I need to take the medication anymore. We weren't getting any write-ups from school. I consulted with his doctor. I want to highlight that I did not take it upon myself to just take him off of medication. I consulted with his doctor, and we were all in agreement. He continued to make progress in around about 11th grade year because he was showing such a great interest in playing basketball and, doing quite well in an effort to just encourage that gift. I chose to put him in private school. That in hopes that maybe it would challenge him academically and maybe give him a opportunity as far as sports, athletics wise.
Mm-hmm. Keep going.
So we put him in private school. He did well. He went on, entered into college, which, mind you, I said to him before we started college, if this is not your thing, you don't have to go, because I realized that college is not for everyone. But he went on because he did get an opportunity to play basketball for the school, for the college. So it was maybe like leading into the second semester of college is when we faced another challenge, mental health challenge.
Okay, so just to wrap it up a little bit on what we just heard. So sounds like a lot of progress. Middle to high school, pretty much things are shaping up. We're hopeful. He's doing better. He's motivated. He's inspired. And now we're getting ready to face another challenge. You want to tell us about it?
I do. And before I go into that challenge, I do want to say, I didn't mention that I found out that my youngest child had his own level of challenges too. So I did get a little bit of break, but then I had to pick it back up.
So can you give us enough of that to want more? But
I think we started to touch on it a little bit. So my youngest child, we had to navigate him having developmental delays. Found out that he had ADHD as well, and just could not seem to get the medication right for him. And then finally found out he had Tourette's syndrome. So that was another level of education that I had.
Lots of different experiences, education that otherwise you would not probably have received about a lot of these different, disorders, treatments, all kinds of stuff. And again, I can imagine it was difficult with your oldest, and then now you have new experiences that you're having to learn about, disorders that maybe you didn't even know were they genetic or.
Still not quite sure. I did ask about the ADHD, was that genetic, but wasn't sure about the Tourette's part. That kind of threw me.
Well, that's why I was thinking, I've heard people say that, it runs in the family, maybe hit or miss, and I was just wondering if with the Tourette's, because.
I have recognized, though, with the Tourette's in my youngest child, when he's stressed, that's when we have more motor tics.
So there's a link between the two.
The stressors. Yep. So we were getting ready to talk about my oldest, where we faced another challenge. So I remember getting a call in the middle of the night, early morning, around about 1. It was, Mom, I was in a car with someone and they were hot boxing.
What's hot boxing?
Right, that's what I said. What's hot boxing? And so hot boxing is when you get in a car and the windows are rolled up and then they're smoking weed and you get a contact also. So that was the narrative that I was given.
Narrative.
The narrative, put it lightly. So with that narrative, apparently by this time, him being 18, apparently he didn't recognize that he had the type of mother that I'm not just going to accept that.
I was wondering, did you believe it?
No, I was getting prepared to go make that ride up to the college to investigate for myself. So that was that. So the second semester of college came. He was like, I just don't believe this is for me. I was like, let's just give it a try. By time it's time to withdraw, if you still are not managing, then we'll withdraw. So he came on. During that time, I started noticing when he was coming home for the weekends, just starting to smell unusual odor. So, young people, they call it gas, they call it loud, they just call it different names.
Yep.
Yes. Either way, it stinks. So,
They call it skunk too.
Yeah, all of that. But still, in his effort to just, I don't know, be in denial, I guess we could say. No, I'm not. It's not me. I'm not smoking.
Even though technically at this point he's grown, but he was raised a certain way, so denial is your best option.
I guess so. Yeah. So, it was. So even that, trying to give him a benefit of the doubt, I began to say to him, well, certain people that you're interacting with, they're saying that they're using more than just smoking. Is that you? No, what are you talking about? I said, well, it's been said you are likely to become that you're around. So at this time, I think the interest was peaking more for me to go back to school, for me to, get my master's, for me to fulfill this calling. I call it a calling.
Yes.
And I say that my oldest son is truly my why.
That's your inspiration.
He is my inspiration. And he's truly my why for other individuals that I come in contact with that may have the same story. But I wish I could say that it was just a short stint, that it was a phase, but it wasn't. It wasn't.
So at this point, what you were thinking was true. You later found out.
I later found out.
Kind of the birds of a feather flock together is kind of what you hinted at. So it was true. At what point in time did he actually let you know, like, or stop being in denial, I guess? Or did he confess or admit, or how did you find out what you thought was true?
So the confessions are still hit or miss. We're still operating in the level of denial.
It's common.
I think that some truth has come forth from the multiple involuntary commitments that I've had to have over the last 5 years or so.
So it has progressively gotten to a point where involuntary commitment, again, this is a part of an education experience. Can you explain for anybody out here, look at the camera and explain it to them, Miss Clinician?
So involuntary commitment is for those individuals who could potentially harm themselves or harm someone else. Thoughts of harming with a plan. So with that in mind, you would have to go to the magistrate to state what's going on. The magistrate would decide if it meets the level or the criteria of potentially harming themselves or harming someone else. And then they will set forth the documentation to have the sheriff escort that individual to the hospital for an assessment to, in fact, see if they meet the criteria for potential hospitalization.
So, in plain terms, because she did it clinically.
Oh, sorry.
Well, you're a clinician, do your thing. You are being put in a facility, whether it's a hospital or sometimes it could be a jail if they don't have a hospital or treatment facility located near you, and it's against your will. It's where you have been determined by somebody that has the authority to do that you are a danger. And again, as she said to yourself or to someone else. So I know we were talking about, and we're just going to kind of sum this up a little bit. So we were talking about something a little bit, you knew it was something a little bit stronger than weed. You knew you had heard through the grapevine. And this is, I've always told you, tell all my guests whatever you're comfortable with. But this is a little bit stronger, a little bit more potent type substance than something, because we all, and even at this time, I'm pretty sure people still think weed is harmless. It's like the least of whatever you could get into. So in kind of keeping that in mind, this is something that you deem to be a lot more serious, has a lot more potential to be harmful. And at this point, he was getting to a point where you were concerned to where you would actually IVC your child or go through the process of doing an IVC. You want to elaborate a little bit for me?
Sure. And I'm glad that you highlighted about like how people believe that smoking weed is just harmless, but I do believe that weed is the gateway to something else, especially if it does not give you that same level of high.
And tolerance happens with any, whether it's alcohol, whether it's with pain medicines, whether it's with weed, anything, any substance, you're going to develop a tolerance at some point.
Mm-hmm. So now we step it up. We're not smoking weed anymore. We're using Percocets. We're popping them. We're snorting them. We're crushing them up, lacing it in our weed, what have you. We're going from Percocets, and now we're stepping it up to fentanyl. So having that experience of seeing someone OD'd, or having the experience of seeing that person that you love, that you birthed, calling out to you, help me, I don't want to do this. But then you turn around and you do it again.
So where we try to stray away from now, but for lack of a better word, is that addiction. There's a point. Anyone who uses substances gets to a point where they know it's wrong, they know they're hurting themselves, they know it's hurting the people around them that loves them, that's watching them, that's experiencing this secondhand, but experiencing it all the same, and they reach out for help because they don't want to continue to experience it. They may even overdose and scare themselves enough to not want to do this again. And they're asking, they're begging. But the addiction component of it, they continue to use because they have a physiological addiction to it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just chiming in. Keep going. I want you to tell your story, but
yeah, this is definitely a challenge, but it's a passion. And I just want to say, this is not for me to make my child look bad in any way, because I truly know I am of a belief, because I am a woman of faith. I have to highlight that. I am of a belief, and I do believe that if he will accept the fact that there is a problem and utilize the resources, the supports that are in place to help him, he shall live. He's going to live. But nevertheless, if him or an individual continues with denial and thinks that they're invincible over something that alters their mind and the construct of their mind and their thinking, they're sadly mistaken.
let's go back to the IPC one time just because it's something you touched on. As you said, you don't want to demonize your child. You don't want to make him seem like he's just this bad, horrible person that is whatever stereotype they got out there, because there's enough. You obviously your child out of love, out of concern. I've seen you at a state where I can look at your face and tell all I'm thinking about is my child. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of other people probably seen it on your face and didn't know what it was. I do. But just for anybody who has a misconception about what you're saying, and because you open it up, feel free to express, I love my child. Do you?
Yeah, by all means, I love my child. And if this story, his story, because I couldn't even begin to touch his story, I can only tell it from my perspective. But if this can help someone else, yeah, I will share it 1,000 times over.
And like you said, his journey, all of it, from the womb to now, is your inspiration for the work you do, why you're passionate. I've seen you go with some folks. Look, I know you're passionate. Tell telling his story from your perspective as a parent not only may help somebody who is actually going through substance use disorder themselves, but do you know how many parents out here are in the same similar situation? They're watching somebody they love, somebody they birthed, somebody they raised. They did everything. They took them to church. They done everything that people say textbook you're supposed to do. And they're at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. If they're faith-based, they're praying. If they are in denial, they're denying it's happening. But your story that you're telling and sharing with us today, and I feel like you kind of wanted to share it for a while, it's motivational, it's inspirational, and I want you to tell me out of your own mouth, as a mother, what do you want for your child who's still struggling? But tell me what you want for your child.
Okay. So I want him to come to a place that he wants to receive the help, and that he would have a mindset change, and he will one day embrace these tests to be able to help somebody else. That's what I would want to come out of all of this. Hence, may I say, in the midst of my husband and our entire family, because when you have these type of challenges, mental health, addictions, it affects the entire family. Hence, I want to say, which I got on my t-shirt today, God inspired my husband and I to start an outreach ministry entitled Recover. And it's called Recovering the Broken. And it's not only about just those challenges of substance use, mental health. It's just any area of anybody's life that is experiencing some type of brokenness, that I want them to know you are not alone. It's many times I could have spoken with people at agencies that are trying to help my child, and threw around the fact that, yeah, I'm a clinician. Yeah, I'm a professional. No, not when I'm dealing with my own. My mother's hat is on. Because I want you to deal with him accordingly. Not because I threw around a title. Titles mean nothing. I just want somebody to know that mental health, addiction, it does not discriminate. It does not. It can knock at your door at any moment. And when it does, if you would allow myself and other providers or other support systems in this county, I want to be a part of that process.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I admire you.
I admire you.
Stop it. For several reasons. One is you have the ability to wear both hats. As a clinician, as a caring mother, and you also have never failed to show your vulnerability when it comes to being a mother, going through these experiences and this journey with your son. That takes a lot. And not only do you show your vulnerability, you go out and you help other people, not paid work, spare time work. She goes out into the community and she enables people to tell their stories, to help them overcome their trauma, and it's voluntary on their behalf and on hers. I'm going to wrap this up because I know I'm getting close to time, but I want to say thank you to Jewell.
Thank you.
And again, this is a dialogue that needs to be had in this community so that, as Jewell said, people can understand you're not going through this alone. It doesn't have a look, it doesn't have a face, it doesn't have a color. Anybody can have these same issues. So if you need help, reach out. We have plenty of clinicians at the table. Jewell is awesome at what she does. Reach out to her if you need help. And again, her perspective is totally different and unbiased. So that's our part 2. See y'all later. Thank you all for joining us for this episode of Riverfront Talks, Substance Matters. If you are from the Beaufort County area and know someone who is suffering from mental health and substance use disorder and may be looking for resources, my information is below in the description. We also would like your feedback to gather input about today's episode. Please also complete the short survey listed in the description. A special thank you to our sponsors, ECU Health Beaufort Hospital and KB Reynolds Charitable Trust. Like, share, and subscribe. See you later.